بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم الحمد لله رب العالمين حمدا يوافي كيف مزيدا نويت تعلم تعليم وتذكر تذكير والنفع انتفاع الفائدة الاستفادة الهدف الأكمسك بكتاب الله تعالى وسنة رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ودواء الهدى ودلالة للخير وابتغاء وجه الله ومرضاته وقربه وثوابه سبحانه وتعالى. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد مفتاح رحمة الله عدد ما في علم الله صلاة وسلام بدوام ملك الله وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم بذكر درجة مرة. All praise be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one who is constantly giving us his divine blessings. Peace and blessings be upon the greatest of all prophets and messengers, the final of them, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Peace and blessings be upon him, upon his brethren from the prophets and messengers, upon his noble family, noble companions, and upon all those who follow his righteous footsteps with excellence until the day of resurrection. Ameen, ameen, ameen. So, I hope, inshallah, you're all well and you're enjoying the days and nights of Ramadan. Alhamdulillah, we're now past a week into Ramadan for those that started on the Thursday night, and also for those that started on the Friday night. Then we're well into Ramadan, the first week of Ramadan. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in mentioning about the days of Ramadan, he said, "Awwaluhu rahma, wa awsatuhu maghfirah, wa akhiruhu itqan min an-nar." That the first 10 days are the days of mercy, of seeking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy and being enshrouded in his mercy. And the second 10 days are the days of seeking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's forgiveness and beseeching him to forgive us our sins, those sins that we've accumulated, those sins that we are aware of and those sins that we're not aware of. But he's aware of everything that we do. So forgiveness, seeking his forgiveness in this time, and then the last 10 days being the last 10 days of seeking freedom from the hellfire. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he allows us to be people that are striving to return back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in these days and these nights, seeking his mercy, his forgiveness, and being saved from the hellfire. Tayyib, inshallah, we've been discussing the fiqh of fasting, and just to recap very briefly, we talked about the definition of fasting from the perspective of the sacred law. So fasting is refraining from this marital relations and refraining from anything entering into the body cavity, whether deliberately or accidentally. And we explained these terms last week. From the time of true dawn, not the false dawn, the true dawn, to the time of the sun setting, i.e. the time of Fajr as-Sadiq to the time of Maghrib, accompanied with the intention. Everything that we do has an intention. We started this lesson with an intention. And, every act of worship needs to be done with intention. So it's accompanied with intention from individuals who are permitted to fast. Because as we know, as we covered last week, there are individuals that are not permitted to fast. For example, a woman in haid, in menstruation, or postnatal, who has postnatal bleeding. So such are the categories of people that are not allowed to fast. Okay, so when does fasting become an obligation? We covered that last week in terms of when someone would be classed as being legally responsible in the Islamic law. And this is when a boy has his first wet dream and a girl would complete her first menstrual cycle. So at this point, then they are classed as legally responsible. And if they don't have that up to the age of 15 lunar years, by default, on their 15th lunar year birthday, they become legally responsible according to the law. So, i.e., their prayers, their fasts, etc., giving zakat, will become an obligation upon them from the age of 15 lunar years onwards. So it's only the case of the wet dream and the first menstrual cycle if it's before those 15 lunar years. So then we covered about the category of people who are excused from fasting in the month of Ramadan, and we've already mentioned about the menstruating woman, the one who's in a state of lochia, postnatal, because they're not permitted to fast in this state. Sick people and women who are pregnant or breastfeeding are obliged to fast unless they have a valid excuse. And we talked about this. We talked about the fact that if they have previous manifest signs of that, they have previous experience of not being able to fast whilst being in that state, and thirdly, having consultation of an upright Muslim doctor who understands the importance of fasting and the obligation of fasting, and therefore wouldn't take it a light matter to say that someone shouldn't fast if they can fast. And then we talked about the traveller, and the traveller being excused from fasting if they initiate their journey before the time of Fajr, because this is a precondition for the fast, for them to be considered as a traveller for the days of fast. If they travel after the time of Fajr, then this person would be obliged to complete their fast. And then we also spoke about the fact that, if someone is classed as a traveller, then it's better to still fast if you're travelling, if you're not going to undergo due hardship. And when we look at the time of travel during the Prophet ﷺ, there's a lot of hardship in that travel. But, going on a train somewhere, I know we can't do it during lockdown, but in general, in other years, going for an hour, 2 hour drive or on the train is not really due hardship. However, we may be excused because we're from an excused category, but as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, khayrun lakum, it's better for us if we fast. Why? It's because we're not going to get these days of Ramadan again. They are seldom days. Ayyamun ma'dudat, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, there's a number of days, then the days are numbered. And we should, as believers, be eager to take benefit in these days, thinking actually, we want to capitalize. This is our investment. We look about the investments of the worldly investments of pension plans and, stocks and shares and all of these different investments that people do. But in reality, the greatest investment is that for the next life. And that's the whole work of our Ramadan. What we're doing is preparing ourselves for the next life, preparing our works, which we're going to receive interest on, because we do a small amount and we see, a multiplication of that benefit in the next life. So we then went on to the different categories of the different types of fast: the obligatory fast, the non-obligatory fast, the fasts which are specified, such as the fasts of Ramadan, and those which are non-specified, which are fasts that anybody can do at any time. And we talked about the different categories and talked about the Sunnah fast. For example, the 9th of Arafat, the 9th of Dhul Hijjah was just the day of Arafat, and also the 9th and 10th of Muharram, or fasting the 10th and 11th in relation to Ashura. And then also the habit of the Prophet ﷺ of fasting 3 days of every month, the Ayyam al-Bayd, the white days, which are the 13th, 14th and 15th of every month, which is where the moon is at its full. And actually studies have shown that when I was reading an article, and it was talking about the crime rates during the time where the moon is full. So at the middle of the lunar months, this is a time where crime, they've done studies and seen that crime goes up at this time, and hormones are increased. So there's a great wisdom as to the actions that the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam did, and following that his way, because there's so many benefits in doing these things, and only now they're kind of talking about such findings, and we see, subhanallah, when we're fasting, the purpose of fasting is to have restraint. So, by entering into that domain of fasting, we're able to have this restraint. Otherwise, our passions are going to be rife, and we're going to cause havoc. And this is why the advice of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam is that for someone that's not married and they're having desires, the best thing for them to do is to fast. Why? It's because this is kind of keeping them up, restraining them from what may be harmful for them to do if they were to act upon their desires. So we talked about what are the stipulations for a fast, a valid fast. We need to have intention. We talked about the women being free from the state of menstruation, lokia, and anything else that would break the fast. So what is the intention? So every day, the intention is needed for each day one fasts, even in the month of Ramadan. And it's the determination in the heart that we're fasting. It's not the fact that, it's convenient for us, everybody else is doing it, I'm doing it. No, I'm fasting as an act of worship for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when does one have to have an intention? The intention is from the time of Maghrib, the night before, to the time of Dawat al-Kubra, which is the midday. Okay, so the midday varies according to the time of the seasons that we're in. So for example, so midday is the halfway point between Fajr and Maghrib. So let's say Fajr comes in at, where we are in Dublin here in Ireland, Fajr comes in around 4:08 today, and Maghrib is at 9 o'clock. So the halfway point between 4 o'clock and 9 o'clock would be classed as the Islamic midday. So I have up to this time to make an intention. However, it's better to make the intention earlier, i.e. from the time of Maghrib. So we make the intention from the time of Maghrib that we're going to fast tomorrow, and that covers us from that point onwards. But if we reach past the midday, then this becomes problematic. Okay. Whereas for a non-specified fast, a voluntary fast, we have to make the intention before the entry of Fajr for that fast to be valid. Okay. Okay. Which is different if somebody actually states that they don't have an intention to fast. So if you've made an intention, I'm not going to fast, that's different because now you haven't got an intention in the first place. Okay, what are some of the recommended acts to do while fasting? One is to eat the pre-dawn meal, the suhoor, before the time of Fajr. And the Prophet ﷺ spoke very highly about it, and he said, my nation will be in a state of goodness as long as they take the suhoor, the pre-dawn meal. And this is what we need in order to have that energy to go through the day in fasting, and to delay the pre-dawn meal close to the time before Fajr enters, but obviously not too close to Fajr that we're eating into Fajr, because obviously the fast would be invalid then. So we have to make sure that we've finished our suhoor before the time of Fajr entry, not during the time of Fajr entry. And to hasten to one breaking the fast during Maghrib. So when Maghrib comes in, then we should be breaking our fast. But obviously being sure that Maghrib time is entered in. And this is a practice which I think sometimes in some masajid in the UK there can be, I remember being in one of the masajid, and they'd announced that Maghrib came in a minute before the actual time for Maghrib. So caution needs to be applied as well to make sure actually Maghrib time has come in, and now I'm ready to break my fast. And in relation to the du'as that we can recite when breaking the fast. Allahumma laka sumtu wa bika amantu wa alayka tawakkaltu wa la rizqika aftartu. So, O Allah, for you I fasted, and in you I believe, and on you I place my reliance, and on your provision I break my fast. So this is from the Sunnah to make this dua, and also make the intention that you're going to be fasting tomorrow. And just a point to note here that the time of iftar is a time of accepted du'as. So the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned this as being one of the categories of having mustajab du'a, and a guaranteed answer du'a. So every day we've got 30 opportunities to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for that which is an accepted time for us to ask in. Now when is this time that we're referring to? We should be in a state that we're beseeching Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala before the time of iftar, but it's actually when we've eaten the date, and it's actually when we've broken our fast, then we make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is the guarantee, this is the accepted time. And this is in line with actually the fact that we're using it, we're saying in the Arabic in the past tense, Allahumma laka sumtu, I fasted for you. Wa bika amantu, I believed in you. So, once we fasted, we've broken our, and then we say we've broken our fast for you. So we should do it as we've taken a date and some water. And this is the best thing to break your fast with, as was the practice of the Prophet ﷺ, and also to take dates in odd numbers. Why? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is witr, and he loves witr. He is from an odd, meaning he's one, and he loves that which is odd. So we break our fast with 1 date, or 3 dates, or 5 dates, or 7 dates. Don't break our fast with 2 dates, or 4 dates, or 6 dates. Use an odd number, because this was the practice of the Prophet ﷺ, and this is what we're encouraged to do. Okay. We've talked about what a woman does if a period starts in Ramadan, and she shouldn't be fasting if she has if her menstruation starts in the day of Ramadan, then her fast is invalid, so she starts to eat. If she comes out of the state of menstruation during the day of Ramadan, then she should do a ghusl to enter into a state of purity, and should refrain from eating up to the time of iftar. Why? Because of the sanctity of the day. And what women would have missed in the days of fasting, because they've been in a state of menstruation, they have to make up after Ramadan is over. Okay. And just a note as well, that for women who have their menstruation stop in the night, then again they must perform the ghusl before the entry of Fajr time, in order for them to be classed as being in a pure state, for them to be able to fast. So it's coming out of the state of menstruation by doing ghusl. Now you're in a state that you're pure, and now you fulfill the criteria from the time of Fajr onwards to be able to enter that day as to be in the state of fasting. And we talked about the 2 conditions, or the 2 actions that can invalidate the fast. And one is the category which invalidates the fast and requires a makeup along with expiation. So we have qada, which is makeup, and kafara, which is expiation. And then there's only that category which requires qada, which just requires makeup. The first category is a principle where someone deliberately performs an act on your own free will without a valid reason. deliberately one remembers that one is fasting and purposefully performs an action that breaks the fast. This requires to fulfill that fast, and it requires an expiatory payment as well, an expiation in terms of kafara, and we'll go on to that shortly. Why is this? And this is only in the month of Ramadan. Otherwise, there's no difference outside of Ramadan. The reason for why this is in Ramadan is because of the sanctity of Ramadan. That really what we're doing is we have crossed the hadud, the limits set by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And because of that, we need to pay a penalty, because it's a serious thing that we've done. We've broken our fast willfully without a valid reason, meaning it's not a joke. So from the first category is eating or drinking something that we would normally consume, and this consummation nourishes and medicates the body in some way. So for example, you just said, okay, I feel like this food, and you just start eating that food. You've broken your fast. So not only is that fast invalid and you have to make that fast up, but you have to do what is known as kafara, make an expiation, a penalty because of what you've done. Secondly is actually having relations, and this is entering through the front or rear part, regardless of whether there's been any liquids that have come out. And the third is swallowing the saliva of one spouse. So to swallow the saliva of one spouse, this would be these three would all be defined as those which would require your makeup and also an expiation for that. And again, it's because we've transgressed the limits that are set. So what is an expiation? An expiation is to fast 60 consecutive days in the year without any interruption. Okay, 60 days. So we think we're finding it difficult in Ramadan. You'd have to fast for doing this. The penalty would be 60 days. And that's not to say 3 days and take a break. No, you have to start again. 60 days consecutively, one after the other for the period of 2 months. Okay. If one is unable to perform this 60 consecutive fast based upon reasonable surety, then we feed the same 60 poor people to fill for 2 meals. So 60 poor people for 2 meals we need to do. Or feed one poor person to his full for 2 meals a day or 60 days. Or give 60 people half a sa', and a sa' is approximately 2 kilos of food grains, or its monetary value. No, we're not really giving people this in the day and age that we live in. We're more giving a payment, and that payment would suffice for people being provided this. Or give 60 people this 2 kgs of dates, or its monetary value, or give one person either the category C, which we've mentioned, which is give 60 people half a sa', or give 60 poor people, half a sa' of wheat or a sa' of dates. So again, it goes back onto the condition of those people who have been excused, that we need to look at. If we can't fast for 60 days, have we got signs that we can't fast for 60 days? Is there experience that we've had? And would there be a qualification of a Muslim doctor who can say that actually we wouldn't be able to do this? So if we fit into that category, then we can start making the payments and making the expiation from what the categories that we've just mentioned. Okay, now just a point here. Somebody might have actually broken or let me just ask the question. If somebody has broken their fast willfully, so for example, by eating and drinking 2 years ago, and they did it last year, and they've done it this year, so three consecutive years, let's just say, what would be the situation of their expiatory expiation for this? What would they need to do? Will they need to do it for each year?
I would say yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's okay. SubhanAllah. That's in one of those studies. What has 180 days of fasting. SubhanAllah. Are we finding Ramadan difficult? And then if you want to feed people, then that's going to be like the equivalent of making 3 kafaras. Any other takers? Okay. One expiatory payment is sufficient for however many however many kafaras we would have done in previous years. So whether we've broken our fast willfully 3 times, 6 times, we make one expiatory fasting or the payment that will suffice for all of them. Alhamdulillah, from the rahmah, that this is the position within the madhab. Okay, so what are acts that invalidate the fast and require makeup but do not require expiation? So this is to eat and drink accidentally. This is to eat and drink accidentally. We didn't know, and we accidentally, okay. Fajr time had entered. We didn't know Fajr time had entered, and we were eating in Fajr time. Now, our fast is invalid. Why? Because we didn't fulfill the condition of being in a state of fasting from Fajr time onwards. So this is something that was accidental, but it means we don't have a valid fast. We have to make it up. But do we have to do kafara and expiation? No, because we didn't do it deliberately. Now, if we deliberately ate into Fajr time, knowing Fajr time had entered, that's a different case. Now, this would be a class as somebody who would need to make up that fast and also give kafara as well. Okay. What about if you're cooking? Are you allowed to taste to check, see that the food is all right? Okay, so the fuqaha mentioned this, the scholars of fiqh, and they say that one would be allowed to taste, the food for a woman whose husband is very difficult, and that would really, it would affect them by her not making the food with the right spices, for example. So she'd be allowed to do that, and just being able to check on her tongue, which is different than to kind of swallow it. She's not allowed to swallow it, but just to check, and then she rinses her mouth. So that would be the only case where she would be allowed to check. And this is actually a serious thing, to be honest. I mean, it's not a joke, because there have been men who have divorced their wives over the fact that the food hasn't been right in iftar. And this is why the fuqaha talk about this, that there's a category that allows for this, but it just shows you how much we've digressed as an ummah, that we've become to this kind of we've well, if you're cooking for your difficult mum, Allahu Alam, I would need to just check that again, but I'd need to get back to you on that. But the reason why there's is specifically stipulated for a woman, for a husband, is because this could end in divorce for the sake of the food not being right. So for that reason, that, you know, someone's not in that category, but for a mother is not from the same. You wouldn't have those repercussions, for example. Maybe I'll just get back to you just to double check that, inshallah. Okay, so eating and drinking forgetfully and thereafter thinking the fast has been broken. So we mentioned the category of somebody who eats and drinks forgetfully. Now, if somebody eats and drinks forgetfully, according to the narration of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has provided sustenance for this individual. And we can see this actually with some old people, some elderly people that are fasting who don't have such good memory. Maybe they've come into the kitchen and they've seen something and they just started eating, not realizing that they're fasting. This is from the rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we shouldn't remind such people who have forgotten that they're now fasting, because they're being provided this mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Likewise, for any of us, if we've consumed something not knowing that we're fasting, then this is from Allah. You know, that's the case there. Now, if somebody had done this, but then thought that their fast is now become invalid, so you've mistakenly eaten or drank, then you've realized you stopped doing it because you've now realized. Now what you do is you think, okay, my fast is broken. You didn't know about this ruling, so you started eating and drinking. Now your fast, now you've gone from forgetfulness into deliberate, because now you're aware and you're eating and drinking. For this case, that person's fast would now be invalid. Do they require makeup? No, they don't, because they thought that their fast was broken by them mistakenly, forgetfully eating. So for this type of person, they would just need to do a qadha, not a kafara, which is different to somebody knowing fully well that they're in the state of fasting and going and eating and drinking because they're just, for no valid reason. Okay, so swallowing something that is between your teeth, if this food that's left over in our teeth before Fajr, so we've had suhoor and we've got something in our mouth, if it's less than a chickpea and it's been consumed, then there's no problem with our fast. If it's more than that, then this would invalidate the fast. Swallowing a pebble, other items that wouldn't typically eat would break the fast. Swallowing toothpaste or mouthwash, this would break the fast. Using toothpaste in your fast doesn't break the fast. If it's not being consumed, it doesn't go down the cavity of the throat. But it's disliked. Why? Because we shouldn't be. It's makruh. Toothpaste is toothpaste is makruh. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that the breath of the fasting person is more beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than the rih misk, the smell of musk. This is more beautiful. I mean, to us it may not be beautiful, but for Allah it's beautiful. Why? It's because we're in the state of worship. Okay. Again, I just want us to, if we have children, to kind of maybe just take them out of the room, or if you could, because I just want to mention something here that's important. Okay, so engaging in intercourse where you're actually in intercourse, whether there's ejaculation or not, this breaks the fast, and this would also mean that kafara would be due. If a man would masturbate, their fast would be invalid, but they do not have to make up kafara. They don't have a makeup. but the invalidation of the fast is done. If liquids come out, i.e. through a wet dream, then this wouldn't invalidate the fast. Why? It's because it's done without desire. That which is done without desire, just by principle, wouldn't invalidate the fast. But that which is done by desire, it would invalidate the fast. But from when engaged in the activity between the two people, this is when expiation would also be required as well. So entry into the private parts, whether ejaculation or not, would mean that kafara would be required. Okay, censorship over, children can be brought back in. Also, I'm sorry, just to mention as well, water, we have to be careful as well, men have to be careful, and women, about not inserting the finger into the back passage, because inserting a wet finger into the back passage would invalidate the fast, okay? Because it's one of the entry points, so therefore we have to be a bit careful when doing sinja during the days of Ramadan. This isn't the same for the front passage, only the back passage. Nose is the entry point, so we have to be careful not to take water into the nose. And this is especially important when doing wudu and also ghusl in the month of Ramadan. So for the Hanafi madhab, we have to, for the conditions for having a valid ghusl, is that every part of our body must be wet. We must wash our mouth 3 times, and we must wash our nose. So this is from the obligations of doing ghusl. However, in the month of Ramadan, we have to be careful, and it's probably best to take the Shafi position and not to take water into the mouth or into the nose. Why? Because of the fear that accidentally we could take water in and therefore invalidate the fast. We don't even need to take the Shafi position, Afwan. It's acceptable in the month of Ramadan that we don't do that. And if we were to do it, then we take water in, but we don't take water back. Same in wudu. We take water in, gargle, and then take the water back out the mouth. Don't go back with the water. Why? Because if you go back with the water, there's a chance the water would go back. Likewise, with the nose. We can wash the nose, it's fine, but don't sniff the water in as you normally do. Why? It's because this is one of the entry points, and if we sniff the water in, water will go inside. Okay. So what are acts that do not break the fast? Eating or drinking something forgetfully, we've talked about. Eating what is between the teeth, if it's less than a chickpea. Leftover traces of medicine in the mouth, for example. Dust or smoke entering one's throat without one's intention of inhaling. Because if you inhale it, then this breaks the fast. Okay? A mosquito, a fly, or any object entering one's throat without one's doing, it doesn't invalidate the fast. Swallowing one's own saliva. We can swallow one's own saliva. It doesn't break the fast. Swallowing one's phlegm or a mucus, that doesn't break the fast. Using a siwak doesn't break the fast. Okay. Eyes, applying kohol in the eyes, which is antimony, which the Prophet ﷺ used to apply. He used to apply it 3 times in the right eye and 3 times in the left eye before sleeping. This doesn't break the fast. Likewise, eye drops wouldn't break the fast, because the eyes are not entry points. Rubbing oil or cream over the body, applying deodorant, having a blood test or withdrawing blood does not break the fast. So we just refresh ourselves back onto the entry point. The mouth is an entry point. It's connected to the throat. The nose is an entry point because it's connected to the throat. The ears are not an entry point. So eardrops, for example, would be fine because it's not coming into an entry point. The eyes are not an entry point. They're not connected to the digestive system. The back passage is an entry point. The front passages of the man and the woman are not entry points. A deep abdominal injury is an entry point because it's directly connected to the digestive system, and the pores of the body are not entry points. Dave, inshallah. Is there any questions? Because we've now completed the fiqh. Inshallah, there's stuff on the itikaf, and maybe we cover that next week with maybe some of the spiritual elements of fasting.
Assalamu alaikum. If you vomit, let's say if you're not feeling very well and you'd be sick because the vomits come from obviously your stomach, does that break your fast?
No. Okay. Vomiting doesn't break your fast. Even if you took that vomit back in, it wouldn't break your fast. Okay, we'll cover the itikaf. Sayyidah Aisha said that the Prophet ﷺ would always perform itikaf in the last 10 days of Ramadan until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took his soul. If you accidentally break fast at adhan time, does it break the fast? You see, at the time of adhan is the time of the entry. Okay. If you accidentally break your fast at the adhan time, does it break fast? Are you talking about the adhan of Fajr time? So the time of Fajr time is the time that, the time of the adhan of Fajr is the time that Fajr comes in. And Fajr would come in at this point, and therefore one should stop eating at the adhan of Fajr. Okay, so if it's at the time of at Fajr, if it's a time that the adhan has come, then you stop. If you've carried on eating whilst the adhan was going on, then this would break your fast. Okay, because you've had the intention of fasting. This would break your fast. And if you accidentally, I would make this fast up. Also, does miscarriage, bleeding break the fast? Yes, because it's from the bleeding. Does having negative thoughts unintentionally break your fast? No, thoughts haven't got nothing to do with fast. With the validity of fasting, sorry. It has nothing to do with validity of fasting, but negative thoughts are something that we should work on from a spiritual perspective in order to, improve our state in the days of fasting, but it doesn't have anything to do with the validity of fasting. It was 10 minutes before Maghrib time. Yes, it does, yeah. If it was 10 minutes before Maghrib time, then it would do. And this actually happened to somebody where they'd taken some rest and woken up and looked out and thought, the fast is open, and they went down and they started to eat, but not realizing actually it was a very cloudy day and Maghrib time, like in this case, was going to be in about 10 minutes. So this invalidated the fast. It was a mistake because they didn't realize that it wasn't Maghrib time. They thought Maghrib time had entered, but in reality, Maghrib time hadn't entered. So therefore, the fast wasn't valid. But no kafara would be due because you haven't purposefully done it knowing that Maghrib time hadn't entered. I heard the adhan, but it was not actually Maghrib time, so it was broken intentionally. I heard the adhan, but it was not actually Maghrib time, so it was broken intentionally. But the adhan went off on the radio. Yeah, I mean, for that case, so now you know that it wasn't actually Maghrib time. So you understood the truth, the reality that Maghrib time hadn't entered. So therefore, you would need to make that fast up. But you're not going to be sinful for having broken your fast because it was done by mistake. And it's something that we should just be a bit more careful about, especially looking at the timetables and making sure that just double checking. We fasted all that time, just to be a bit more assertive as to the timings. The adhan was being played on the radio for different cities. It's difficult, especially now because we've got all of these we've got technology and all these different apps, and we can actually access radio stations in different cities, and their adhans are going off, but it can be a bit confusing. But yeah. Do you have to make a fast missed from miscarriage? Yeah, it would be the same as a woman in her menstruation, and it would also be the same in postnatal bleeding. So for a woman in this state, she must not fast, but she must make up the fasts after Ramadan. Inshallah. So just to cover the i'tikaf before we finish. So the i'tikaf is entering the masjid with the intention to remain there for worship, and it is actually from the it's what we would call a it is a fard al-kifaya. Sunnat al-kifaya for somebody in the community to make i'tikaf in the masjid. Otherwise, people in the whole community would be held responsible. Now, obviously, at this time, there's no masajid that are open, and this obligation is lifted from us, so to speak, or this practice is lifted from us. But so therefore, for men, it's not a requirement that they make i'tikaf in their home. But for women, i'tikaf is the place. The place of i'tikaf is the place of the home, and it's recommended for women to perform i'tikaf in the home, not in the masjid. So it's a place designated where she's designated to pray and has her obligatory and nafil prayers. So the only thing that you can't do in being in a state of i'tikaf that you could otherwise do is have relations. There's this is in reference to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in Surah Al-Baqarah, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states, وَلَا تُبَاشِرُوا وَهُنَّ وَأَنْتُمْ آكِفُونَ فِي الْمَسَاجِدِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, but do not associate with your wives while you are in retreat in the mosques. So this is something which is not permissible in the state of i'tikaf. Now, for a woman in this time, for women that are in lockdown, if it's a regular practice to do i'tikaf, then you can do i'tikaf. But just to say that I'm now doing i'tikaf because I can't go anywhere in lockdown, it's not really the same meaning as i'tikaf, where you're actually designating that time, and it's a practice that you do in order to connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Inshallah. Do you have to fast if pregnant or breastfeeding? So again, we covered this category earlier on, and by default, yes, unless you've got signs that you can't fast. You had from experience that you find it would be too difficult for you to fast, and it was cause some difficulty for the baby in doing it. And thirdly, and most importantly, if an upright Muslim doctor would actually advise you not to fast because of your pregnancy or your breastfeeding in the state that you're in. And the people in different states, somebody might be in their first trimester, which is different to in the last trimester. So it goes upon the individual. Generally speaking, one should fast unless there is a reason or an excuse on their situation for them not to fast. So it's a case-by-case basis, not just a blanket statement to say that you don't have to fast. طيب إن شاء الله. اللهم اسألك زيادة في الدين وبركة في الأمر وسعة في الجسد وسعة في الرزق وتوبة من قبل الموت وشهادة عند الموت ومغفرة بعد الموت وعفو من الحساب من العذاب ونصيبا من الجنة ورزقنا نظر وجهك الكريم. Ya Allah, we ask you that you accept this gathering. We ask you that you give us an understanding of your religion. We ask you that you accept our fasts and you accept our worship in these days and these nights. We ask you that you remove difficulties from our path and that you allow us to reach you with ease, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, we ask you that you forgive all of our sins, that you you bless our families, you bless our children, our parents, and all those around us, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, we ask you that you remove anxiety and depression and any spiritual, mental, and physical ailments from us, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, we ask you that you give us a complete well-being, that you allow this lockdown to be lifted from us, and we have this tribulation lifted from us. Ya Allah, we ask you that you protect the Muslim Ummah, that you give to those that are in need, that you bless the Muslims of the East and the West, those that are in difficulties, those whose situations are impoverished. Ya Allah, we ask you that you give to them, Ya Allah. We ask you that you allow us to give to them in these times, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, we ask you that you make our risk plentiful, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, we ask you that you bless us in these days and these nights, and that you connect us to you, Ya Allah, and that we become disconnected from everything that disconnects us from you, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, we ask you that you allow us to be people of taqwa, that we embody the people of taqwa, we follow the righteous, we follow the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we have love for the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we have ittiba upon the Sunnah, and that we become closer and closer, and every day of Ramadan we become better than the day before. We ask you, Ya Allah, with all good intentions of all the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked for, and we ask you to save us from all that he has to be saved for. نشهد أن لا إله إلا الله نستغفر الله نسألك الجنة ونعوذ بك من النار نشهد أن لا إله إلا الله نستغفر الله نسألك الجنة ونعوذ بك من النار نشهد أن لا إله إلا الله نستغفر الله نسألك الجنة ونعوذ بك من النار اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا وعن والدينا يا كريم. صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.